Hello and welcome to Pearls of Wisdom by Pearl Operational Design. I'm Hazel Lord and I want to welcome you back to our video if you are coming back to us, or if you're new to this channel, I welcome you and invite you to go back and listen to some of our other videos. So in the last video, I talked about operational design and that I was going to use some examples in the next videos to demonstrate what I mean by an operational design and why it's important. That's the critical piece. So I think conceptually people understand we're in business. We tell our customers that we're delivering this value. We have these different functions that need to work together in order to deliver that. I think conceptually we understand it. However, sometimes when we're making big shifts, this is not always what we see anyway as a prevailing thought. So I'm going to take you back to 2011, circa 2011, before then. Target, and we all know Target. I used to go drive down to the States, those trips down to the States to shop at Target. Great store. Target entered into the Canadian market in 2011 when it purchased the store footprints of another brand called Zellers. If you are in Canada, you will know the brand. And in a 2-year period, the intent was to open up about 124 stores nationally. This happened. And unfortunately, in 2015, they filed for bankruptcy and Target has no presence in the Canadian market. Now, this happened a number of years ago, so as you will guess, there is tons of literature on this, and I'm not here to recreate what happened. I am here to show that all the components of the operating model, when done separately, doesn't always meet with the end result. So we have different thoughts, different perspectives. Some people will say Target did not quite understand the Canadian market, or they really thought the Canadian market was very, very similar to that of America, and therefore they didn't come in with the right pricing strategies. However, I'm operations, so I'm going to look at it from an operational context. There were many things that went wrong, and there's a Canadian Business article that does great justice to really just delineating all of the challenges that Target had. But to summarize, here are the challenges. First and foremost, they had disparate IT systems. So their replenishment system was different from their SAP system that was an enterprise resource planning system, which was very different from their POS system. And while having different systems is not a bad thing, sometimes having a huge ERP may not necessarily be good. However, as someone who was doing an implementation of a very, very, very large ERP systems around the same time, you really have to understand what are your end-to-end processes, because where do those systems end, where do they begin, and what data has to cross the interface. So when you hear that things were disparate, that your one system wasn't effectively talking to another from regards to replenishment right down to your point of sales, then the question remains, were they clear on their end-to-end processes to ensure that the technology that they had effectively enabled the end-to-end? So there goes process, because sadly, in many of the articles that they have out there, no one really wants to talk about process. But process is the anchor of many of those technology enablement functions. So technology was off, end-to-end processes were unclear. People. So, and I'm going to look at people in the context of both the human resources and the talent, as well as the culture, because that's important. Target was unable to replicate the culture that they had in America here in Canada. They did hire lots of younger talent in the States. This younger talent is normally paired up, mentors, training. That did not happen when they entered the Canadian market. You had talent that gamed the system. That tells me that there's an incentive structure that they wanted to maintain, or they will be called out for it, which also speaks to culture. So they didn't replicate. And then they were also coming in not so much to gain a new market, but they were coming in to steal share. And as a recipient of someone whose employee got taken by Target, they also brought in new talent, took talent, and had expats. However, with the human resources that they had, they were not able to replicate the culture that they had in America, which is absolutely critical and key. The other thing was data, and their data caused huge impacts on their supply chain operations, because we know that data here in Canada is different from data in the States in terms of the units of measure. And while you might think that that is small, that impacted the supply chain operations. So while separately they may not seem as if they're big issues, but together, which is what I see as the key components of your operating system, they were unsuccessful at moving an operating model or an operating design from a successful American market into the Canadian market. Another piece that's important as well, of course, is when you're moving an operation model, what must be true when you leave one market and you enter another? Are they the same? So this is just a quick example of the fact that an operating model needs to be looked at holistically and not separately in order to either scale it or expand it, as Target did. Case in point, if you are adding a room to your house or adding another piece to your house, and you determine that, you know what, you're going to have very high ceilings, you don't do the ceilings separate to the windows. You're not going to have high ceilings, small windows, small lighting. You're going to look at the design in a holistic manner so that everything works together. And that is what is necessary when you're looking at your operations model. The last point I would say is, I went to a conference and one of the panelists was talking about business and saying, my biggest challenge is scaling. So afterwards, I approached her and I said, well, while one of the challenges for organizations is scaling, my question to her was, are you scaling revenues? Which is great. As a small business, that's extremely important. Are you just scaling your human resources? And that's what tends to happen. You're scaling your revenues, and to match that demand, you supply by scaling your human resources. That is not what you need to only focus on with scaling. As you attempt to meet demand with your supply, when you're scaling your organization, you're actually scaling your operations, which consists of all of the components and some that I talked about and exemplified in the Target case. So hopefully this answers some of your questions. And if not, please drop some in the comments. Happy to respond to your questions. And if you found benefit from this video, as always, I invite you, share the knowledge. Thank you.